Welcome to another episode of Brothers Arguing Sports. I'm Zob. Across the Zoom is TD. And today we are going to argue who is the greatest grass court player of our lifetime. Is it Pete Sampras? Is it Roger Federer? Or is it Novak Djokovic? TD, who do you think it is?
This pained me to come to this conclusion, but I had to settle on Roger Federer. And simply put, it's his dominance in tie breaks and his five-peat that I think in the heart of his five-peat at Wimbledon, if he faced Pistol Pete, knowing this, he's the titan of the tiebreak, I would have to put my money on Federer. Now, no one in history has a higher tiebreak win rate than Federer. He's 65.1%. Pistol Pete is right there in fifth place at 62.8%. Now, in slam finals, though, is where Federer really is just exceptional. He was first all-time at 65.1%. He has a 70% tiebreak win rate in slam finals. So I think you take him in the heart of his prime, in the heart of that five-peat, I'd have to put my money on him beating Pistol Pete.
Well, I love Federer, arguably my favorite player of all time, but I got to go with Pistol Pete because, first of all, Pistol Pete was more dominant than Roger Federer. Now, Federer, you mentioned that early part of his career, but he still lost. He lost to Nadal. He lost 3 times to Novak Djokovic. Pistol Pete, you look from 93 to 2000, he dominated. He only lost 1 match in that time frame, and he beat big-time grass court players. So that's why I give my edge to Sampras over Federer.
Yeah, no, listen, I wanted to say Pete Sampras because 7 and 8 years is a run of dominance. And Zav, he wasn't beating chumps, he was beating Wimbledon champions.
Ivanisevic, Rafter, Agassi, big time players Pete beat. Boris
Becker.
Yes.
These guys are Wimbledon champions that he was beating.
Mm-hmm.
But I know Federer had a lot of losses, and it's true. It's hard to ignore that. But the pushback on that would be he lost 4 times, but he lost 3 times to Joker and 1 time to Nadal. So he's playing the top 3 in history.
Yeah.
So that's where you can knock him.
Even better than the players Sampras beat, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And even in his five-peat, he beat Roddick twice. He beat a prime Nadal twice and a Philippoussis. So Federer was facing, even though Pistol Pete faced great competition, I'll argue better competition. And even though Pistol Pete had a more dominant run, 7 and 8 years, and like Michael Jordan, which adds to the aura, which is why I wanted to go with Pistol Pete. He never lost a final. You played Pistol Pete in the final, you didn't beat him. And the only thing that pushed, he has, I know Federer has 8 and he has 7. When you're that high, it doesn't really matter to me. It's just that if my life was on the line, I would have to give it to Roger because those would go to tie breaks. Well, and I think he'd have the edge.
Let me disagree with you there. This is my second reason why I picked Pistol Pete over Federer. And that is, you mentioned if it came down to this close tiebreaker, Pistol Pete's game is made for grass. That's where I feel Pistol Pete gets the edge over Joker. Joker to me is dominant, probably better than both of them. But his best surface is in Australia, and where he's won 10. And you saw that today in the final. He only had 2 aces against Alcaraz in a 5-set match. Pistol Pete, even better than Sampras. Bleacher Report did a study where they looked at spin rate and speed. They compared serves. Sampras was number 1. Fed was number 5. And what Sampras has, which people don't have in today's game, was a dominant second serve. He would go for it on a second serve. You think about Sampras's overhead, his punch volleys.
That overhead was the best in history, and the touch at the net.
And not only the touch at the net, in my opinion, his best shot. Let's say when he came to the net to do serve and volley and you did a great return, he had those little dig outs where you could just serve it right or hit it right at his feet, and he would just dig it out and just play the point. So in my opinion, his game was just so tailor-made to grass, whereas I think Fed and Novak, they've benefited a little bit from the courts being slower. They slowed the grass down to have more rallies, and you put them in Pete's time period, not a chance. I would take Pete if my life was on the line. Fast grass courts, serve and volley. Give me Pistol Pete anytime, any day.
I think it would be a hell of a match.
Yeah. And all right. So you're still sticking with Fed?
I'm sticking. Listen, I love Pete. And it was, I wanted to go with him because it's the competition he beat. He was beating champions too. But listen, Federer was facing, I think, better players.
Yep. Okay. You're sticking with it.
Yeah. And
that's your argument. Yeah. Okay. Fair point.
And if it came down to a tie break and my life was on the line, I'd say, how did I bet against Federer? And that's why I had to go with
on grass. Give me Pistol Pete and that serve and volley. I will go with Pistol Pete. All right. Good debate. Talk to you later.
All right.